Olá, eu sou Tina Medeiros e Pipoca Gigante traz hoje para você, que gosta de bom cinema, um presente. Um bate-papo com o cineasta alemão Werner Herzog, dono de uma filmografia premiadíssima. Fiquem agora com os melhores momentos dessa conversa com uma verdadeira lenda viva do cinema. Até!
Well, directing a film is not difficult. Anyone can do it. Anyone who has an understanding of the human heart can actually do it. For me, making documentaries or feature films is not such a different thing. For me, it's all movies. Yes, in some of my films, not all of them, we see some sort of a conflict between nature and human beings. And you see it, for example, in Aqui, La Ira de Dios, or you see it in quite a few other films. It's not a central theme, but I believe that fully developed technical societies have lost a context with nature. And of course, I have made films like Grizzly Man, where there's a misunderstanding of wild nature, as if nature was some sort of an invention by Walt Disney, the Disneyization of wild nature, which in the case of Grizzly Man leads to a catastrophic end of the protagonist and his young girlfriend. So it is a subject which has always fascinated me. Which countries, where is there real new filmmaking? I can answer it very easily. Iran, South Korea, Austria, Romania. Yesterday, Rui Guerra tells me that Brazil has some very, very fine, very young filmmakers, but we haven't seen their films yet. They are not in distribution. But probably more than anywhere else, Iran. Very, very fascinating.
Which filmmakers?
Abbas Kiarostami. He's the best, he's the finest. Some of his best work is something like 20 years back. Where is the House of My Friend? Anyone who is fascinated about cinema has to see that film. And anyone who is interested in cinema should see his film Close Up. It's absolutely wonderful, wonderful stuff. So films come from very unexpected corners of the world. Taiwan, I think, has China, but it's more some smaller countries like Austria, Romania. Second part of your question about that's cinema. Yes, when you look at blockbuster films, American studio films, much of what you see is special effects, and much of it is not just pretty faces. It's a pretty face doesn't do it. It has to be stars, star power, faces with which people worldwide can identify. Or seek to identify. Yes, and it's obvious that storytelling, great storytelling, is undervalued. It is not the very center of things anymore. And cinema has to correct it, because cinema still is story, according to, I think, one of the Warner Brothers. I don't know whether it's really one of the Warner Brothers. He said there are three things important in cinema: story, story, story. And I think it's still valid today. And I do not see films like, let's say, Casablanca or Viva Zapata or The Treasure of Sierra Madre, which is absolute wonderful storytelling. And because there is a deficit, in a way, some of Hollywood is looking at my work. Some of them are looking at my work because I'm good as a storyteller. And storytelling is always the center of what I'm doing. And I have never been into digital effects. But I have worked with stars like Christian Bale or Nicolas Cage and some others. But when I work with a star, it's more for the caliber of acting, because Nicolas Cage is a phenomenal actor, and so is Christian Bale. But you are pointing at a deficit.
Yes, I was going to ask you, in fact, where do you see filmmaking 10 years from now with these major?
Well, 10 years from now, I do not know. I'm not a prophet, but my instincts tell me that cinema has to return more towards storytelling. There's no doubt in my heart, because the big firework effects of big action movies will somehow exhaust itself. And movie audiences are always out for a good story. It comes very easily to me. And because I have such a strong vision, I can translate it very quickly on a set, which means I leave crews, for example, when I did my technical crew, when I did Bad Lieutenant with Nicolas Cage, my days of shooting were over at 2 p.m., 3 p.m., 4 p.m., not until 6 or 8 in the evening. And I said, well, gentlemen, we have finished for today. Can we go to the next set? No, next set is not ready yet, and the actor hasn't arrived. So I said, then it's the end of our shooting day. And my technical crew was completely nervous. They said, what about coverage? What about coverage? And I didn't know what they meant. So I took my assistant director to the side and asked him, can you explain what do you mean by coverage? And he said, yes, a shot from down here, and a shot from a helicopter, and a shot very close, only on the eyes, and a reverse shot here. And so I said, but I don't want it, I don't need it. I see what I need for the screen. So you see, I do not film very much. Into the Abyss, which is a film 1 hour and 45 minutes, almost 2 hours long film, I shot and it's a documentary, and I shot something like 8 hours for it. And anyone else would have shot 300 hours. I shoot 8 hours and I edit the film in 10 days, 2 weeks. And because I see so clearly what is my vision, it's also fairly quick and easy to edit a film. I can see it very clearly. Sometimes, of course, there are obstacles, and sometimes I do not know where should I turn next, and so of course it happens. And of course, on a set, I modify the story, and I see things that all of a sudden come like an additional invasion. Writing has always come easily to me. I don't know why, but it actually happens, and I do believe that what I have written, for example, Conquest of the Useless, a book which is based on diaries from Fitzcarraldo, or Of Walking in Ice, will survive, will outlive all my films. So that's just a side remark. But I think what is quite important is that I read. And I hardly see any films. I see maybe 2 or 3 films a year, sometimes a little bit more. But I'm not a regular moviegoer, probably less than an average audience who is not into movie making. And how can I explain? You see, I founded my own film school, the Rogue Film School, because I'm very dissatisfied what is going on in film schools. And not only in the United States, basically worldwide. And one of the things that I tell students is read. And I just do not say read, I tell them read, 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 read. If you do not read, you will never be a great filmmaker. And when you apply for film school, you have to send in a written application. and you have to send in a short film that you have made, and there's a mandatory reading list. You have to read at least 5 books of a list that I put out, it's all books that have nothing to do with filmmaking, mostly with poetry, Roman antiquity, Virgil, the Georgics, or old Icelandic poetry 1,000 years back. But it includes also a short story of Hemingway and some other things, Bernal Diaz del Castillo, The Conquest of New Spain. So, because that's storytelling at its best, and also, of course, history. So that's one of the things I try to tell everyone: read. Also, traveling on foot. It's probably better to travel from, let's say, Ushuaia on the southern tip of Argentina to Colombia on foot, which will take you, I would say, 5-6 months at least, but it's probably more worth than 3-4 years in film school, because the world opens itself, the world reveals itself to those who travel on foot. And I don't mean backpacking or jogging or just hiking. I mean real traveling on foot in the ancient way. So there's a lot of things that have seemingly nothing to do with filmmaking, and yet they're very, very important. Music, for example. You have to engage yourself with music, and you have to develop a sense of music and of rhythm. I also like people who are athletic. Much of the work that you are doing has to do with athletic understanding of spaces and moving and choreography in a space. And it's not only the choreography of your actors, it's also the camera that dances with the actors. So it's a lot of elements that do not seem to have a connection to cinema, but they have. Ultimately, it is a very simple thing. You have to understand the human heart, the heart of men. So if you do that, you can probably fairly easily move them to show their deep innermost character or feelings. For me, it's not really difficult. I have not learned any other profession. I wish I could be an athlete, but I'm a filmmaker. Okay, thank you.